So today I'm going to be walking through a week of group programming for the affiliate which I co-own, Lumber Capital Athletics. And it's going to be a little bit different because often we do individual design. I do individual design on programming TV. So this is going to be an opportunity to look at what affiliate programming can look like and what it looks like for me at my affiliate in the current cycle that we're going through. So I'll give a little bit of context. It is actually the week that I'm programming for is the start of July here, which is we're about 6 weeks into. We're 6 weeks into a cycle, which is our summer cycle for 2023. Currently, these are running 8 weeks, so we're most of the way through this one. The template for this, right? First of all, on Monday, we're going to have clean and jerk strength work. And then following that, we're going to have some sort of a longer conditioning-based piece that is geared towards running and something else, right? So a couplet featuring running. And the one thing that I'm trying to avoid on Monday is giving people too much additional hinging work. So a lift that is not hinging based. Because on Tuesday, they're going to get more hinging and pulling strength work. So hinging, pulling out the floor, pulling strength, thinking about upper body pulling. So things like pull-ups or rope climbs or, bent rows, anything like that would count. And then we're going to involve skill work at some point into this week. Often that'll be on Tuesdays, but that's actually been varying quite a bit. And then high power intervals as well on that day 2. Wednesday, day 3, pressing. This is both bench press and strict press. These are it's an alinear progression that we're kind of running where that's a fancy way of saying it's going to vary a lot over time. And it's not a linear progression where it's a little bit different week 1 versus week 2, like one extra set. Or a little bit of extra rest, or just push the intensity a little bit more. It's a little bit more varied than that. And then we have an MGW Metcon featuring either inversion or pressing work. So MGW, monostructural, gymnastics, weightlifting, 3 different components. So think like body weight, think manipulating external load, and then think about being on a machine or moving your own body weight in something that is, again, cyclical based or erg based. And then again, that's hopefully going to feature something that is either getting someone upside down or doing a burpee that's involving some additional pressing. So that's sort of the idea is that there's some additional pressing work. Thursday is a little bit of a lower day for the gym. It's often for people who are doing the entire week, more of a down day, but it's still a program day where we're actually putting some good quality work in for people who aren't, showing up every day of the week. If you're getting here 2 or 3 times a week and Thursday is one of those days, it's still a day where you can push the intensity a little bit and the programming allows for that to happen. So on this day, it's tempo squats. So we're doing a bit of variance in that format. So it'll be we've done dumbbell squats, we've done goblet squats, we've done front squats and back squats, each of those twice now as we move through this. And then ideally, after that second part, it's multiple AMRAPs. So basically sets of an AMRAP featuring a box, right? So oftentimes that will be step ups, box step overs. It could even be things that are lunging based or carries, things that are a little bit more isometric in nature where the person is not getting a ton of eccentric loading where they're going to be super sore or beat up. As I mentioned, the squats at the beginning are tempo as well. So basically overall, it's just a day that's lower joint stress and allows the person to leave where they're feeling like they still got to work out in, but then not feeling destroyed from that. Friday, day 5, snatches, and then in the conditioning portion, intervals featuring a dumbbell. And then Saturday is sort of an open day where I can have free reign of what I can want to program and having already the rest of the week written out where I can make sure that's not super interfering or unnecessarily redundant in what we're doing from previous days of the week. And it's often, almost always, either team or partner based there. And then you'll see that oftentimes there is a strength in a conditioning type format where it's a strength is usually first and then conditioning or intervals or that sort of thing is second. That's not always the case, but that is often the case. So let's jump into it. So currently the week of June 26th is up here. So we're going to pull this down and build out a new week. Starting off Monday, again, we have clean jerk strength. And one of the things that we actually did the other week in the protocol, which I've really enjoyed, was some like battery work that didn't have a ton of fatigue. So it was what we did in the protocol was actually very similar. This was every 3 minutes, I think, for 7 sets, a 1 minute working window where athletes have 1 minute to get 12 for males, 10 for females calories on the rower, and then 1 clean and jerk in the lift have to be finished by the 1 minute mark. Knowing our population here, I wanted something where hopefully this was like at or under 30 seconds of work, which 12 and 10 on the rower might be a little bit aggressive. I also want to save the rower for a different week. So this kind of served as actually the run portion a day. So oftentimes looking at a longer AMRAP, again, for this portion, but I don't always hold myself really stringently to the template. Just because I want to include a little bit of variety. And if people are showing up on a particular day of the week, like, hey, coach, I can only ever show up on Monday and Thursday. And it's like, you're only ever getting this one narrow focus. So allowing myself to be a little bit creative, but not stray too far from the template where it's just like a pain to try to manage all and balance all the different things. Like the reason why the template's there to start to, get an idea of where I can go with stuff. So I actually ended up putting the shuttle run there, assuming that that's going to be, 3 to 4 seconds of length for the average member. You're looking, around 30 seconds to get done with that. Some people will be significantly quicker than that. And other people might take a little over 30 seconds to get through, but they'll have plenty of time either way to get that 1 clean and jerk in. And that way it's not such like a load of aerobic stress or metabolic fatigue that they're like really not able to clean and jerk well. And that allows it to still be strength work, right? And bringing that down to every 2 minutes, because again, these people aren't lifting crazy heavy in a class environment, relative to like some of my higher level competitors. So understanding that that's just not going to be quite as taxing from a nervous system perspective, like they're going to feel like they can lift again relatively quickly. That allows them to kind of keep moving. One of the things you'll see on day 2 over here is that there's skill work, and knowing what Tuesday is going to be and what it actually ended up being, I ended up putting the skill work onto this Monday because the AMRAP after it, the skill work is actually going to be a little bit shorter. Again, normally it's longer because I made it a little bit shorter because it's only a couplet. It's only 2 movements. So I typically like to keep those a little bit on the shoulder end and also allows volume not to get out of control. That's what sort of allows you. That's why I ended up putting the skill work in there. So this is the workout that I came up with for the second part. The lifting portion was a hang to overhead. And then I wanted something that got a little bit more bounding volume just to increase that a little bit, because even 4 times 8 for 32 shuttle runs is not a lot of work relative to like oftentimes we've been running a mile plus in a class format on Mondays before this. So getting a little bit additional bounding or jumping in probably makes sense. So I did a burpee box jump over and a hang to overhead because that's just limiting the amount of hinging that they're getting. And most people in a class environment, frankly, have a stronger hang clean than they do shoulder to overhead, just because the shoulder mobility, especially for a lot of the guys, is not what it could be. So, or that's just sort of like the reality of what they're dealing with. Yeah, 15-minute clock is just an opportunity for an athlete to go through and pick out a skill. We have a spreadsheet that we link to and have them be able to basically have a tailored progression to the type of thing that they're working on, whether it's hanging gymnastics, inverting gymnastics, rope skills, weightlifting work with like Oli technique, things like that. It allows them to move through a progression at their own pace. And again, that 11-minute AMRAP, 2 burpee box jump over, 1 hang to overhead, 115.85, and then 2 burpee box jump over again, 2 hang to overhead, 2 burpee box jump over, 3 hang to overhead, 2, 4, 2, 5. So the hang to overhead will continue to build as the burpee box jump over remains the same. And that way it's sort of like a heart rate spike each time that's coming around, and it makes that moving that barbell a little bit more challenging. So that would be Monday. Next Tuesday, we're having, again, since I already did the skill work there, and that's sort of a free floater in the week, it allows me to play with how we're going to do these hinging and pulling intervals, or hinging and pulling strength, and these high power intervals a little bit more. So we're going to start off. There's been a number of different formats that we've done, but basically up to this point, we really haven't touched anything, even like a heavy triple on deadlift yet. It's been quite a bit of volume and just getting people, like, either the tempo is really aggressive, there's a lot of sets where people can't go crazy on it, or they're doing like descending sets where they might get to 2 by the end, but they started at like 10 and they want to be working sets, so they have quite a bit of fatigue by the time they get there. So this will allow people to get to a higher absolute loading than previous weeks, which is the goal, because eventually we're probably going to retest like maybe not a 1RM, but certainly a heavy deadlift by the time we get to the week of July 17th at the end of the cycle. So that's kind of why I put that in there. And then I've been kind of really wanting to do this. I know this sort of is, again, straying from the template a little bit, but I really wanted to, I was kind of envisioning a workout where people are running around the building, which is like 150 meters for us is a lap around the building, and then doing a rope climb, but doing it in a way that is more like sprint focused. So if we look to like previous weeks, this is probably like a really good example of what we were doing before. Every 4 minutes for 4 sets, 10 dumbbell snatches, 70-50, and then max calorie air bike until the 1 minute mark. So 1 minute on, 3 minutes off for 4 sets. So it's obviously a very hard, high effort pace. I wanted to mimic that a little bit, where someone's almost doing like a sprint type effort running, and then doing, again, like this rope climb work here, which again, for the majority of our members will probably be just like a regular rope climb, or potentially like a rope pull to stand type variation. But the goal is to run really hard before you get there. So there's gonna be some people who just can't do that, and that's okay. However, like they just don't have the top end gears. For other people who are able to, like the Regulus rope climb or rope climb proficiency is there, where they can very easily do a rep of that even when they're fatigued. It then becomes like sprint as fast as you can immediately into a rope climb that when you're a little bit fatigued. And being the number of sets that there are, it's going to allow the challenge to be repeating that high effort across multiple bouts of work. So I know that was kind of like bounding running back to back on 2 days, but neither day is going to be like out of control volume wise. Like this is less than a mile on this Tuesday, and it's going to be certainly less than probably well under 100 contractions for the day one. So I think it's fine to deviate from it a little bit, provided that you're smart about it, and I hope I am. Wednesday. So this is our pressing work. The previous week we did strict presses and ring rows. Again, ring rows just being additional like shoulder health and horizontal pulling, because you don't get that a ton in a class environment. And then the previous week was bench press, but it was also sort of like in our interval style format. So I want it to be just regular old bench press sets. We did a similar format to this, I believe, 3 or 4 weeks ago at this point, but it was 5 bench presses, and it was, again, all kind of moderate effort. So like RPE 7. So keeping the language of that, maybe more like moderately tough here since it's only triples, but then having triples again. So intensifying both these, again, I don't really want to call them progressions, but that's basically what it is on days 2 and day 3 with the deadlift and bench press here. And then thinking about this, I know that we're probably going to use the air bike on Thursday's workout. So I don't want people doing more running or anything like that. So we're going to get them onto the rowers on this workout. And I also want it to be something that was inversion based, because we haven't done much of that. I think, this one was, again, actually was bench press in the workout, and the previous week was shoulder overheads. So again, I want people to make sure that they're actually getting some gymnastics work in. So rather than just going straight strict handstand push-up, I figured we would go wall facing this time and make the row for meters, just because that way if we go for a longer time domain, it doesn't get out of hand for a big discrepancy between the best and the worst. And this is kind of what I came up with for this, was 4 rounds for time with a 17-minute cap, just putting the cap on there so people don't really allow it to bleed out too much, right? They keep the work rate a little bit higher. 500 meter row, 50 goblet lunge, 70 for males, 53 for females, and 5 wall facing handstand push-ups. Now I recognize anytime we do something like a wall facing handstand push-up, or just handstand push-ups as a whole, even wall walks, right? There's going to be some people who like that is super easy and they move through it quickly and doesn't really slow them down much. And frankly, we give them a lot more challenge. And there's other people who have no ability to be able to do that. And oftentimes it is like a seated strict press or a variation like that for something that's like a strict handstand push-up to try to build that capacity rather than going to a kipping variation. So in this case, I wanted to scale it a little bit differently. So we're scaling to a dumbbell overhead carry. This was actually something that they did for the Masters athletes at the games the other year for, I believe, the 65 plus. They didn't handstand walk. Instead, they did a dumbbell overhead carry. And while it's definitely not the same as a handstand push-up, it allows people to get some overhead work in. So that was the scale. The RX Plus is actually going to be putting bumpers up against a wall and then putting like your finger over the lip of them and using that as your deficit. So again, for the especially like, frankly, it's like a lot of the males in class who can strict press well above their body weight, and they're just like strong guys, and that's something where like 5 wall-facing handstand push-ups is just not challenging. So giving them to a deficit, it allows them, even in a format like this, probably not going to slow them down a whole lot, but it provides enough challenge where it feels like they're being, having adequate, challenge in their week. Yeah. So that is Wednesday. Thursday, again, as I mentioned, this is a little bit of a lower day. The tempo squatting, we went in previous weeks, it was dumbbell squats, then front squats, then back squats, then goblet squats, and then front squats again. So we're going to go back to back squats. So every 2 minutes times 8 sets. Again, previously it was a little bit more rest and a little bit higher rep range. So increasing the number of sets, but bringing the reps down a bit and keeping the tempo kind of moderate is going to allow people to increase weight a little bit, but still not get out of hand because it is supposed to be a little bit of a lower day. And then I'm going to actually bring back the format that I'd used from I believe again, 3 or 4 weeks ago, which is something that I do quite a bit in this. For example, if we go to day 5, June 30th was a workout that had devil's presses and lunges in it. And I believe on June 2nd, there it is, it was single arm devil's press and a single dumbbell lunge. And so the formatting was a little bit different, rest scheme was a little bit different, but it was very similar type idea, similar patterns, and similar time domain. So that kind of thing happens. Also, like June 23rd, I had one that was speed hobbles, which was sort of a play off 2 weeks or the week before that, which was speed wobbles, right? Which was overhead squats and double unders, and then dumbbell overhead squats and speed steps. So ways to vary a look of what athletes are getting and not having it be necessarily even back-to-back weeks, but making sure that you're staying narrow enough in the silo of what you're trying to do to make sure the person's actually getting the stimulus that you want, but providing enough variation that they enjoy themselves and are not bored with what you're actually doing. Which is a little bit different than if I was this was like a competitor's program or not. I don't care as much if you're enjoying it, if you're improving, which obviously is still important in the class setting, but we have to balance it a little bit differently. So this is what I came up with: 0.6 mile air bike, 16 box step ups, 60 single unders, 16 down dog to an alternating toe touch, and then so it's 8 minutes of that. First set is at 60% effort. Second set is at 80% effort, resting 4 minutes between. And during each of those sets, during the rest of each of those sets, you'll be walking once around the building for us. So again, allowing for quite a bit of breathing, the heart rate to get up, to get some sweaty work in, but also not like super draining. Friday, July 7th. So the snatch work has been pretty similar in the fact that the intervals have been pretty short. The reps have been pretty low. Just kind of like form-focused complex work for a lot of it, or stuff that is relatively simple and building because, again, frankly, a lot of our members aren't lifting high enough absolute loads relative to like something that, for example, like they could deadlift. I'm thinking of athletes who can, snatch 95 pounds, but they can deadlift 315. It's like, well, clearly you're not limited by your strength in a setting like that. So continuing to allow them to get a lot of basically a bunch of sets of quality focused work in are good opportunities for them to continue to improve technique without having a crazy frequency for us, like snatching like 3 times a week. Like we're just never going to do that in class. So it allows them to get a little bit of exposure to that. This week we're doing every 90 seconds for 10 sets, 1 snatch plus 2 overhead squats. And you notice I put a lot of the strength work onto a clock just because it allows the class like lesson plan to be really more detailed and more accurate, frankly, versus just like letting people do it on their own. And some people get done with their 10 sets and 10 minutes and someone else is going for 30 minutes. Like that could very easily happen. So it's just an easy way to do it, to put it on a clock for everything and kind of control the work rest across the board. And then I wanted again, these intervals are something that obviously you could vary the format of an interval. But I wanted to be a dumbbell, and I also wanted a little bit more hanging gymnastics, since we have only had the legless rope climbs that I believe this week so far. So giving them some toes to bar. And then also, I know we had a box yesterday, but it was step ups, very different than a box jump. So even as, preferred scale is going to be a box jump, even if it's to a low box on that day. So wanted, again, a similar type feel, yet different from like day 2, where it was that run into the legless rope climb, where it was like sprint, rest, sprint, rest. This is going to be more conditioning based, but it'll still be like higher output work, rest, higher output work again for a fixed period of time. So 20 minutes of work, AMRAP 20 minutes, 8 box jump, 8 toes to bar, 8 dumbbell snatch. Again, for a lot of people, that's going to be plenty challenging, where that rest time is going to go really fast for them. And then for higher level people in class, it's going to be sprinting each of those movements every single time that comes up, right? And they're basically getting more rest than they are work, and that's totally fine. And it's just going to be a different stimulus, right? They're going to be working on cycle rate instead of as much conditioning based, and that's totally okay. If we go over here, one thing that I'll skip to this now is that we've been incorporating, since we've opened actually, vegetables, and they're just kind of free floating on the tab on the website, and I have these built out ahead of time, so I'll just put them right there. But it's basically just an opportunity for joint health and some additional work that is going to be productive, and they can add that volume in, and it's only going to be helpful. So in this case, it's 50 band pull aparts. You can always accumulate this work as you see fit. It's never saying you have to go through an order. So 50 band pull aparts, 50 supinated scap pull-ups, 50 hip extensions on the GHD, 50 hollow rocks, and 50 ring rows. All stuff that if you did a bunch of that, you're probably only going to feel better, generally speaking, than if you didn't do that. As I said, Saturday is often partner-based, and that's no exception for this Saturday. We have a partner WOD, but I did want a little bit of additional, and it sometimes it's based on like the length of the WOD, or other times it's just like kind of what practically fits into the week. And if I feel like I wanted something else, I almost put power cleans into this AMRAP, and I was like, nah, I'll stick with the template and stick with the dumbbell. So I instead put it here every 3 minutes for 5 sets, 3 power cleans, dropping and resetting between those reps, starting moderate and ending heavy. So ideally sharing bars there. And then for the partner workout, and this ended up, sometimes they'll use partner, sometimes use team of 3, and it really just depends on what the format of the workout is. And I kind of, often as I'll do this kind of thing, I'll jot down 3 movements. So I put down burpee pull-ups, which is, again, kind of a little bit of like hang gymnastics work, but something that's not kipping based, since we had toes to bar yesterday that was kipping based. And then in this case, figured we'd bring back out the rower, and because I feel like I give people running all the time on Saturdays right now because it is nice out. So giving them rowing and then wall balls, and that's always a good combo. And then more power cleans at the end of the workout. So that was sort of like my thought process behind this. And I like having something where it is more like a couplet, or, not so many movements that it gets complicated to like work the logistics of a workout. But an easy way to do that is if you have like a buy-in or a buyout, and then they can kind of focus on one movement at a time or 2 movements at a time. So in this case, we do have a buy-in and a buyout. So it's 4 time with your partner. You're going to be doing 30 burpee pull-ups each. So each of you will be doing that work. And then the rest of the work is split between you two. And then it's 10 rounds of a 25 calorie row for guys, 21 for females, 25 wall balls. So 25 calories, 25 wall balls, 10 rounds of that, which is obviously going to be a lot of work. And then the buyout is 30 power cleans at 155 or 105. And then I'll probably put in some language about for the floor coach to make sure that they're scaling to a certain percentage of maybe what they hit in the strength, or making sure that it's well below the threshold that they obviously hit for the strength portion. So that's a week at Lumber Capital Athletics. Hope Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want to see more about group programming for my affiliate, or you're just kind of curious about my thoughts for as it relates to competitors or GPP athletes or anything else, let me know. Yeah, feel free to message me. I'll get back to you. You can email me, ben@zorfitness.com, or DM me at zorfitness. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.